Howdy folks, welcome to another ranking video. Your favorite whiteboard dynamic duo, SpongeBob and Patrick, back at it once again to rank air-cooled motorcycles based on if we like them or not. Logan, what makes an air-cooled bike interesting?
Yeah, so air-cooled bikes are really cool because today, 99.9% of motorcycles are going to be liquid-cooled. They're more efficient, they make more power, but they can sometimes feel a little bit sterile, a little bit too buttoned up. Whereas an air-cooled engine, it's got that mechanical purity, looser tolerances, more noise and authenticity from the engine. And it just usually leads to a really interesting, unique riding experience.
That's true. And so in today's world, the air-cooled engine is very rare. And so we also wanted to caveat and say that we're not doing any Harleys or dual sports in today's video, because honestly, ain't nobody got time for that. We're not doing that in today's video. And our extra dimension for today's video is we're gonna tell you guys if these bikes are actually cool or not. Do they have cultural cachet, or should you just go back and get something more vintage and actually unique from a different time period? Let's start with the motorcycle you may have totally forgotten existed, because I certainly did. It is none other than the Yamaha V-Star 250. Logan, the baby V-twin cruiser from Yamaha. Can you believe they still make this thing?
I cannot believe they still make this thing, but I'm happy they do, right? I mean, in what world in 2026 could you even comprehend them making a dedicated singular V-twin two-cylinder engine for a beginner bike? That's just crazy.
Yeah, for a 250 V-twin engine, air-cooled in a tiny cruiser, it is definitely a bike that's just kind of endured over the years. Yamaha's got a couple of these in their catalog, much like Suzuki, bikes that have just been, toiling away in the background, just never wanting to update to not meet emissions compliance, because there's no chance this thing could meet any sort of emissions compliance in 2026. And so what is this motorcycle? This is kind of like a entry-level 250. This is back from the days of like Ninja 250s, tiny small bore bikes, being beginner bikes. And honestly, I think a lot of these have been relegated to MSF duty, the entry-level rider course, because they have low seat heights, very approachable. And I do think, Logan, that much like Rebel 250s, Ninja 250s, some of these old legendary standby beginner bikes, there's people that are out there still riding them, enjoying them. 100%. I feel like the kind of coastal lifestyle guy, he's like, I got a V-Star 250, man. I take it down to the beach and just hang,
Yeah, and it's a bike you're never gonna really have to worry about. You can buy parts at Ace Hardware, I'm sure. Oil change once every 5 years and you're good to go.
Yeah, you put some olive oil in there, it's fine, who cares? It's now an Italian motorcycle, and then that V-twin is going to break itself apart. So, a cool sound, tiny V-twin. I think it has like novelty factor.
Certainly. I mean, it's cute and it's endearing, and it's, harkens back to a different era of motorcycling that feels very foreign in 2026. But does that mean it's cool?
Is it cool? Buying it brand new is not, I have to say, because we're talking about new air-cooled bikes. We're imagining ourselves going to the dealership and buying it brand new. This is a crazy move to go and buy this bike brand new. Like, did you not do any research at all on the internet of like what an entry-level motorcycle is in the year of our Lord 2026? I'm torn on is it cool or not, because I feel like if I saw one, I'd be like, oh, neat. Like I don't see these that often. But I also think it's not like classically cool. I'm gonna give it a question mark. I think I'm on the fence about if it's cool or not. What about you?
I'm just gonna say no, it's not cool. Like I said, it's cute and it's enduring, but it's not cool.
Enduring and endearing, I would say. Both.
Yes.
It has survived the test of time, and it is kind of sweet and cute.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, and it's the only cutesy bike we have on the list, and of course it is last place. So, moving on.
If ever there was a foil to the V-Star 250, it is, of course, the BMW R18. I'm just gonna say the Roctane because I think it's so fun, but they do make other trim models of this motorcycle.
I always forget that is like an actual trim of the bike and not just like the bike itself.
It's a lifestyle of the bike. It's not a trim, it's a lifestyle.
No. Yeah, and it's not even a bike. It is a lifestyle. You buy into the Roctane ideals. So what is this bike, Logan?
So yeah, this is BMW's air-cooled cruiser, massive 1800cc boxer engine, air-cooled, real land barge of a motorcycle. Very, very kind of silly, over the top in the trying to be an edgy bad boy middle-aged man thing. It's like where you see the middle-aged man, he's got the True Religion jeans and the Affliction t-shirt, and he's like really ripped, but like really old.
Yeah, it's definitely a vibe. So this bike to me, I remember when we test rode one, the words that kept coming to my mind was like whale, land barge, massive, giant, unwieldy. I think it weighs well over 800 pounds.
It's a lot of bike.
Just hewn of metal, the big cylinder sticking out of the side. If ever there's a motorcycle that screamed both male insecurity, financial illiteracy, and somehow also like non-cool factor, it's this bike, Because you go to get the Big Daddy Harley, you're buying into like, that's like an established lifestyle. Like, you got to do what you got to do. This is like the guy that wants to do that, but is like, I'm a free thinker. I'm going to do something different. I don't really get it. So obviously you guys can tell we don't think this bike is very cool, but let's look at the bike just in and of itself. Unique engine architecture, boxers, only BMW does it. The sheer size of the engine is quite unique. Like, that's a massive honkin' stonkin' engine. I think it makes well over 100 foot-pounds of torque, which hopefully it has to because it's so big. And so to me, and the fact that it's air-cooled, it's interesting. I have seen maybe 1 or 2 of these in the wild. They're pretty rare. I mostly see them at the dealerships not being sold, if I'm being totally honest. Every time I go pick up a giveaway bike or I gotta go do some service, it's there, just sitting there, awaiting for its noble soldier to come and pull it like the sword of Excalibur. Right, the right rider has to come and will that bike into existence. I'm gonna put a question mark for this one. I know that seems generous, and truthfully, for me personally, you wouldn't catch me dead on one of these things, but I think it's interesting and it's unique. I don't know.
Sure.
That's my
I mean,
feel.
it's interesting in like that person could have gone and got a Harley Davidson.
They could have.
And that's really interesting. But for me, I don't think I'm chopped enough to think this is cool.
Damn.
So I'm gonna say no, it's not cool.
Logan is brutal today.
Ask me again in 35 years.
Maybe at that point, since all we'll have is electric bikes and Chinese bikes, you're like yearning for a big air-cooled BMW.
Maybe. Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. Well, Logan, this next one is painful for me because it is a bike I've owned before. I've owned a specific variant of this motorcycle, but I gotta call a spade a spade.
Sure.
The Ducati Scrambler finds its way
pretty low
on our list, pretty low. And honestly, the Scrambler has fallen lower in my estimation for several reasons. First of all, Ducati used to make a ton of different variants of this thing, Logan. They had 1100 cc's, 803 cc's, the venerable Desert Sled, which is a cult classic. A lot of people like that one. That was the one I had. I really enjoyed it. And they used to have this kind of like authentic, interesting, charming thing about them. Somewhere along the way, Logan, it feels like they slapped on a TFT, they dropped the 1100, they dropped the Desert Sled, and now they have the new headlight. It's kind of, lost a little bit of its charm to me. How does the Scrambler fit you?
Yeah, I mean, the Scrambler's interesting because it's, I've poked fun at you here and there a little bit about, it's kind of like a, baby's first Ducati, like the Toys R Us version or Walmart version of Ducati. Yeah. Despite being very authentic, more so than a lot of motorcycles they currently produce in terms of air-cooled engine, trellis frame, all that stuff. So it's a cool bike for sure. I think it was really cool 10 years ago, 10 years ago, like around the time you were getting your sled and stuff, like I would have been like, that's so sweet. You know? Today, it feels a little bit passe maybe, or whatever, maybe a little bit gauche.
Because I think the Scrambler thing has really come and gone.
Yeah,
I think people are still trying to like cash in on that. It's sort of like cafe racer stuff. I'm like, that was like so 2011. You know what I mean? I'm kind of like, well, I don't know, And yeah, to your point, when I got into the Scrambler, it was about 2016, 2017 when I saw those first ones and I test rode one and I was like, wow, this is really cool. But yeah, I just think nowadays it's a little past its prime. Honestly, we talk about this all the time. The coolest thing Ducati could do, drop this whole Scrambler veneer, take that same frame and engine and just create like a sort of Ducati Classico Puro line. Do an old school monster, do like a super sport. Because people are, if you made like an 800 and 1100 with the trellis frame, a monster and a super sport, boom, you'd sell so many of those.
Yeah,
so many.
It is a shame that the sort of retro air-cooled thing has been relegated so much to like the cafe racer stuff. Where it's like, for a long time, so every type of motorcycle is air-cooled, not just these sort of, roadster cafe bikes. And I think that's like sort of a fault of the Scrambler compared to some of the other bikes we see later on the list is the Scrambler got a little too modern despite being kind of old. And it's the same reason like we hate the Suzuki 8TT where it's like retro new versus some of the other bikes on the list work a little bit harder to be new and modern, but far more authentic at the same time.
Yeah, and the perfect example I'd give is you guys saw last week, my Ducati Monster 1100S, my new personal motorcycle. I made a whole video about it talking about modern bikes and old school bikes. And you look back at that bike in 2009, it was air-cooled, but it was still a performance model, and it was Ducati trying to do different stuff with it. And you could say, oh, well, like that's all they had back in the day, but that's not even true. Liquid-cooled bikes.
Was not that long ago. That was like 45 years ago, I think.
You could say, oh, that's all they had to work with. And like Ducati's been making liquid-cooled performance engines since the 90s, So I don't understand why we can't create an air-cooled bike that isn't a hokey, kind of like pastiche, right? Like it could be something different.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's because the amount of engineering that would have to go in to make an air-cooled bike still meet modern emission standards and stuff, they'd be like, well, why don't we just make it liquid cooled and make it make more power, and people would be more likely to spend money on it.
Yeah, but I also think, you know, in a world where things are just, everything's getting so fast and so smooth and so everything else, like, I do think the appetite will be there in the next 5 years for just like a normal bike. And that's why later on in the video, we're talking about some bikes that have definitely just not failed upwards, but met the moment unintentionally. And so we'll talk about those. So Ducati Scrambler, it's not cool. I gotta say. Even as a former owner, the Desert Sled was the only one I would really kind of, you know, get. And now that one doesn't even exist anymore, so I gotta call it.
Yeah, I'd say the ones you can buy today, not cool. Like an 1100 from 5-7 years ago, kind of cool. So maybe that puts me in the question mark territory, just to be a little bit more fair.
Gosh, are any of these bikes going to be cool, Logan? Damn,
oh yeah, there's some cool ones on the list for sure. So this next motorcycle on the list is definitely one of the most interesting, I think. Even amongst all these other cool, unique, authentic, air-cooled machines, the Kawasaki W800 is really kind of an oddball.
It is a super oddball. And this is a bike that probably flies under the radar for a lot of people, but it has some features that are sort of unthinkable in the modern world. So talk us through this bike.
So yeah, at first glance, you might just think, oh, it's kind of like, you know, classic British roadster, kind of maybe what Royal Enfield's doing, maybe what the Bonneville kind of is. But then you look at the price tag and you're like, why does this thing cost $11,000? But yeah, you look a little bit closer, and the engine is unlike anything else on the market today. Of course, there are air-cooled twins, you know, Royal Enfields and things like that. This is a vertical twin, 360-degree crank, so both pistons moving at the same time simultaneously. Of course, air-cooled, and it has like, I don't remember the exact name, but
bevel drive.
Bevel drive
Yep.
cams, right?
It's a bevel drive cam. So basically what it does is instead of having a cam chain, which most modern motorcycles have, dual overhead cam, the cam chain follows down to the bottom, this uses a bevel system where this kind of like cylinder and a bevel gear at the top is in time with the two cams up at the top. Super weird and unique. And you can actually see it on the side of the engine. It almost looks like a singular push rod. But it's that one bevel gear.
Spinning,
So, and it's got the little pea shooter exhaust. It is the most authentically like proper old school bike on the list today.
Yeah, completely. And it's so funny because it's like, you'd think Kawasaki would have made, if they're going vintage air-cooled heritage model, would have gone like a UJM 4-cylinder something. But this is more authentic to the era when the Japanese were just kind of ripping off British bikes, because that vertical twin 360-degree crank bevel cam thing is like an old school British bike thing made by Kawasaki. Yeah, it's just such an interesting sort of enigma of a motorcycle.
Yeah, I think this bike does suffer though from like, if you know, you know. Like if you saw a W800, you'd be like, wow, that's so neat. But ultimately, it just kind of like ends up looking just like a classic little roadster, and you don't really understand why it's so special. And honestly, to me, that wins all sorts of like hipster cool points in my book, because I think that's really neat to own a bike that has all these special things about it. You can tell like we're getting older, where I'm like, oh, it's got special stuff on it. That's so neat. You know, just sound like such an old timer. But it is cool. It doesn't exist like anything else. And actually, I've heard that some of the tooling they use for like the switch clusters are from the bikes from like the 70s. So they're literally using the stuff they made from like 50 years ago on this bike, using the same machines. It's a very unique machine, one that I honestly really want to ride now, because like I said, does it translate into a meaningfully different riding experience over, let's say, a Royal Enfield or a Bonneville? I have to assume it does. All right, so Kawasaki W800. Gets a check for me.
Cool.
Super cool. Super cool. I think double check mark for us. Why did we rank it a little lower then if we think it's so neat and cool?
Price, and it's just so weird, and it's so like, again, like enigmatic. Like I don't think until I ride one, I don't think I know enough about it to rank it any higher.
Yeah, that's
like
fair.
This is purely on interest and intrigue alone.
Yeah. I think if this was a list ranked on like quirkiness, it would be number one for sure. But yeah, it's very expensive. You got to know what you're getting into. But yeah, I'm like very captivated by this bike. I really want to check one out. If you have a W800 and you're willing to lend it to me for like a couple of days, hit us up in the comments, and I would love to do a feature video on it. That'd be a lot of fun. All right, Logan, next up is a motorcycle that left a very long-lasting impression on both of us, actually. I think this bike really opened our eyes to the flying V, thinking different, a little bit of the Italian charm and flavor is, of course, the Moto Guzzi V7. A bike that when we picked it up for a giveaway, I kind of just did it on a lark. I was like, oh, let's do something different over the wintertime in 25 and in 26. We had this collaboration with Aprilia. We got the V4 and we got the Guzzi. I was like, oh, this is going to be fun. What a like a slow burn of a bike.
Yeah, right.
Really cool bike. So why is this bike interesting?
So of course, I mean, Guzzis in general, air-cooled transverse V-twin. So, you know, the cylinders stick out horizontally from the frame. That alone is cool, unique, interesting. Forget the BMW Boxers. It's got to be a V-twin sticking out the side.
That's right.
And then on top of that, shaft drive. So a roadster with the shaft drive, really cool, like kind of overbuilt, over-engineered. Like they just don't make them like they used to. You know what I mean? Like no one is other than Guzzi is going to make a shaft-driven little cruiser roadster thing with an air-cooled transverse V-twin. It's distinctly Guzzi.
Yeah, and I think this bike has evolved in such a restrained and nice way. You know, they could have done the Scrambler thing where they just like slapped a TFT on there and like didn't really care, but they so deliberately evolved and changed this bike to the point where it still rides really authentically. They added sort of these secret features that make the bike more usable. Got like a secret cruise control module, which you don't even see on the handlebar. Big tank for long miles. I just think the bike is super romantic and interesting, and like one of the coolest air-cooled bikes on the market. Super unique,
Yeah, for sure. And it perfectly executes the classic retro air-cooled charm, but still being modern and usable and fun. Like riding my Sportster and then riding that couldn't be more different. You know, night and day difference, despite being both air-cooled twins. Or you still have to purchase it brand new, very modern, very well built, but very interesting and cool in a way that most manufacturers can't or refuse to sort of accomplish, because I'm sure it is a feat of engineering to make something old and classic and sort of heritage, but still modern and efficient and, you know, EPA approved. You know.
The Guzzi is really cool. When you fire it up, you can really sense it's like such an old school experience. That like kind of agricultural chunky thing that it does when it starts up, and the way it pulls away. Yeah, like those are the intangibles that we love in air-cooled bikes. That you, again, as Logan said, like you go buy a liquid-cooled parallel twin, even the Triumph products, so they're really great, but they're missing that just old school charm. It's hard to explain. And I love that you can get the Guzzi in some fun colors.
Yeah, for sure.
I really love that.
Too,
like Nano Verde that we had. It was very cool. So Guzzi to me, I think really neat. I love seeing a Guzzi on the road. I don't know why I did such a tiny check mark. I love seeing Guzzis on the road, and I love riding them too. I guess ultra thick check mark because I really like it.
Yeah.
What about you?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I think it's cool. I think it's great. And I appreciate that a lot of people like them. You know what I mean? For being so sort of obscure and oddball, they sell a fair amount. I see them like once a week. I see a Guzzi parked somewhere around town, if not more, actually. So this motorcycle's come up kind of often the past couple months. It's kind of ironic considering how much we dog in the Boxer engine and BMW motorcycles in general, but we both have kind of a soft spot for the BMW R12 GS, right?
It's true. It's true. It's a cool bike, you know? This bike to me is what I think a lot of the Ducati Scrambler desert sled owners wanted their bikes to be. It's what like Triumph Scrambler 1200 XE owners want their bike to be. I just think this bike does it the best. Yeah. What makes this bike cool?
Well, it's cool because it has an air-cooled Boxer engine, right? That's sort of the classic BMW that they've abandoned in their newer models that have moved to liquid cooling. A liquid-cooled Boxer engine is kind of silly. What is this, a Subaru? You know what I mean? And so it's their kind of classic air-cooled enduro rally model that sort of harkens back to those like early Dakar wins and stuff from the R80 GS, I think is what it was called. So it's classic enduro, has some serious off-road chops from what I've seen, at least in the right hands. Probably nothing I could ever dream of. But yeah, kind of classic rally air-cooled BMW. Pretty sweet.
Yeah. It's got a big 21-inch front wheel, proper like ADV bike level chops, but in a naked configuration with an air-cooled engine. The dash is not some gross giant TFT display. Everything you need, nothing you don't. I think there's something really neat about that. And you got to say, the bike looks great.
Yeah,
it's a great looking motorcycle.
Looks really, really cool in that sort of white, red, and blue like colorway. And
although points off for BMW for using like weird AI generated images for this bike when they launched. Why did like you're BMW, you have so much money, just like go take some photos of the bike.
Right.
What was that all about? So it splits the difference for modern performance and old school looks and vibe, has an air-cooled engine, but this is a bike you could slab up miles with, cruise to the coffee shop with, like a general purpose bike that still is interesting to ride. And I think that's kind of the charm of it, right? Where it's sort of like a middleweight ADV. I mean, obviously the engine's much larger than a middleweight ADV. It can serve those same purposes, but just be so cool and stylish doing it.
Yeah, you don't need to do the full spaceship dad bike like Megatron type of thing, you know. It's all the good things about that, but none of the lame, nerdy, dorky stuff.
Yeah,
you know?
and that's really appealing. I mean, it's a reason
100%.
why I got my desert sled, because I kind of was like, I want it, you know, middleweight ADV like is like definitely the most logical choice. And it is a bike I still ended up with, but at the time, you want something a little cooler,
Right.
you know? Yeah. So this bike to me, yeah, definitely cool. Really like it. It's a bit pricey. It's a BMW, and it's like kind of that Enduro heritage product. I think this thing runs like 18 grand or something, right? Like
Right
kind of
around
pricey.
20, I think.
Yeah, but that makes sense. You think it's cool?
Oh yeah, I think it's really cool.
Sweet.
I think it's very cool.
All right, moving on. Penultimate place. All right, if one brand has had a glow up, a change in the story arc here on Yami Noob, and I think throughout motorcycling, it has to be Royal Enfield. And we think the Royal Enfield 650s are the second best new air-cooled bikes you can buy. And it's crazy because back in 2017 when these launched, it was such a different landscape. You know, these bikes were just like, oh, they're trying to do the authentic thing, they're trying to do the roadster thing, blah, blah, blah. Now in 2026, as they've endured through Chinese bikes, through parallel twins, through not so super sports, through low T Gixxers, all these things, this bike and this platform has really emerged as this kind of like value-driven, authentically cool, air-cooled riding experience that is now exceedingly rare. You cannot really get this experience for this price. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah, they're market proven, right? They've sold millions of these motorcycles. And it's funny, we talk about how rare and how uncommon air-cooled bikes are. Royal Enfield is out here just printing them out, you know what I mean? And when you think about, you know, would I buy, if I was a new rider, especially knowing what I know now and knowing what I'm interested in, I would buy a Royal Enfield 650 before like a Triumph 400, like every day of the week. You know what I mean?
Totally, yeah.
And it's like, so even all these other companies are trying to sort of, you know, eat Royal Enfield's lunch in the sort of classic heritage, beginner-friendly segment, aren't even fully executing it the way Royal Enfield has by just doing the same thing for so long.
Yeah,
you know?
no, and that's such a great point where you go and buy a price-for-price comparable like Triumph Scrambler 400 product, single-cylinder, liquid-cooled, kind of has the vibe. You know, we joked that it was like Barbie Jeep from that. But the Royal Enfield feels like a real motorcycle. It's a big parallel twin, two-cylinder, air-cooled. I just think it has so much more going for it. So much more.
Sounds pretty cool. And all the things that seem silly, like you can get it in cool paint. But that's actually cool. You can get it in cool paint. There's so many motorcycles that it's just black or white. You know?
Yeah, no, I think that's a massive selling point. And I think we've been talking about it for years where like manufacturers need to follow suit and offer more paint colors because that obviously matters to people.
For sure.
And not only that, they also, I mean, maybe too much, they cross-platform the 650 into all kinds of different models. So you can get a cruiser, you can get a roadster, you can get a cafe racer, you can get a scrambler-looking thing. So any sort of like visual configuration you want with this engine and chassis, you can basically get. And that is amazing. I think it's really cool, and it's really kind of strange that Royal Enfield has ended up in this place. You know, as a kind of a joke manufacturer in the early 2010s to reemerge as the flag bearer for like air-cooled, authentic roadster experiences for accessible price, which is something that a lot of people need nowadays. I recommend these all the time, all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I just can't help but thinking if I started riding motorcycles now, or if we know what we know now about these 650s 7-8 years ago when I started riding, I certainly, like, it's almost no-brainer would have started on one of these, you know what I mean? As opposed to like the air-cooled, like classic UJM bikes that I was fiddling with for the first couple years, and then a Sportster, which is heavy and slow and cool, but you know, whatever. But at the time, 20 whatever, I was like, oh, Royal Enfield, those are like crap bikes, you know what I mean? Whatever. But you know, things change, reputations change, people become more knowledgeable and aware. Yeah, so suffice to say, I think it's a cool motorcycle.
Yeah, I would say it's this generation's Sportster.
Yeah, for sure.
Right, like in the 80s, you had this Harley Sportster, this authentic big twin, you know, whatever. I think the Royal Enfield 650 is this generation's Sportster. You know, something accessible, fun, reasonably priced. Because I think these are like $6,800, $6,500. That's a great motorcycle for that price.
Yeah, for sure. And find them used for like $4,000, $3,500.
Yeah. How many Facebook update videos have we done with that? Like, find all these great Royal Enfields for that price. So, do I think it is cool? I'd say so, right? I think it's cool. Yeah, I think there's a bit of hesitation in me just to say like, it's a Royal Enfield. That's just my own bias and stigma about the brand, which really, I think they've long past proven that point. So I'm going to say yes. I think it's cool.
Especially if you think about the Royal Enfield 650s through the eyes of a young person, younger than even me. They don't have those preconceived notions or those prejudices or those judgments. I think you know, objectively, they're probably pretty cool, especially the more cafe roadster scrambler ones.
So we're gonna give it the double check. It is cool. Yeah.
Double check.
Look at that. We move up to the list, and all of a sudden it's check marks all the way up. Yeah. So what is number one, the coolest or best air-cooled motorcycle on the list? Let's find out.
So you know you really like a motorcycle when you're doing research and writing and pre-production for these videos, and you think, should I go buy one?
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I'm at with the Moto Guzzi V85 TT. It kind of combines everything I like about my Honda Transalp and everything I like about my Harley-Davidson Sportster into one cool Italian motorcycle.
And what's not to like, right? Yeah. I don't even understand how the V85 TT is a bike that is being made today.
No,
this feels
right.
like a bike that was made in like 2002. And they're like, hey, here you go, you know? Because this thing, it uses the same 853cc transverse V-twin as the Guzzi, but puts it in a bespoke sort of like adventure touring package.
Right.
Nobody's doing that. Nobody's doing that. The closest you're gonna get is this BMW R12 GS, which is more of like that bop around scrambler. This thing, shaft drive, comfortable ergos, like hit the road, you know? Like how cool is that?
Yeah, pretty simple. That's what I hear a lot about, people love about Guzzis, because they are this simple kind of classic design. They're pretty easy to like, you know, chew miles on. And yeah, I think the closest comparison would be like if BMW sold a 1150 GS like brand new still, you know, as they did back in the day.
Yeah, like products like this, I think are so unique in motorcycling where, you know, if you're into like cars and stuff like that, imagine, you know, you could go to Porsche and just get like an air-cooled 911, you know, like everyone would lose their minds. But this still exists in motorcycling. It's so special for that reason. And I think given the fact that it is the only air-cooled touring motorcycle for sale today, it is the only bike that you can do that sort of thing with. You can have yourself like an authentic old school adventure with this.
Yeah.
And you could go like no phone, paper maps, air-cooled touring bike, literally try out this like distilled pure version of motorcycling.
Yeah,
I think it's
it'd be
super
really cool. Yeah, romantic for sure.
Yeah.
And even it's an important motorcycle when you think of Guzzi does sell the V100, which is a different touring bike, but liquid cooled. And that's sort of them going the BMW route of being like, yeah, we're gonna maintain this, you know, horizontally opposed transverse engine layout, but liquid cool it at the same time. And you're like, that doesn't really hit the same.
Yeah, a lot of people are head over heels with the Mandello, the V100. And for me, I'm like, it's okay. I rode it, I reviewed it. I thought that because it was sort of like splitting the difference between that liquid cooled touring bike and like an old school Guzzi, to me, it didn't accomplish either one particularly well.
Right.
It wasn't very sporty. It wasn't very, I didn't really gel with the bike. But this one, really neat.
Yeah, really
neat. Yeah. This has to be the best one on the list today. Best air-cooled bike. Nothing like it on the market. And I think it's also a testament to both BMW and Guzzi for having two bikes on the list today.
True,
Although the
that's
R18 is kind of ridiculous. But, you know, that R12 GS, the V7, the V85 TT, it's cool that, you know, like we said, there's very few air-cooled bikes still being sold brand new that aren't old dinosaur dual sports or random Harleys. So really neat. So yeah, hard check for me. Very cool bike. And obviously, since you want to go buy one, I'll give you a check mark. But Logan, we had a special one. Agent Zero.
Right. The sleeper cell.
Who's the sleeper cell? Who's this other air-cooled bike that you could go buy right now, brand new?
If you've got $15,000 burning a hole in your pocket and want to take a flight up to Goshen, Indiana, Janice will sell you a Halcyon 250 with an air-cooled engine.
That's true. Yep. You can get all the stonking performance that comes with. So here's the thing about the Janus. We made a whole video. If you want to go back in the catalog and watch the review, my issue with that bike is these bikes here, they give you that authentic, interesting, like, you know, bespoke experience. The Janus doesn't do that. It's just
No, it feels bad.
It's just bad. It feels like someone stuffed like a lawnmower engine in like a Huffy bike frame and said, how cool is this? And I'm like, well, not really. It just rides like ass.
Yeah, it feels very much like a backyard build in like this sketchy, unsafe, but also unflattering and unfun way.
Yeah.
Like it's not like I've had more fun riding like a Lime scooter than a Janus. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Like,
and
like a Lime scooter's not fast. This isn't. But it's fun and silly.
I think it could outrun a Janus.
Oh, 100%. In the right conditions.
Yeah.
With the right pilot behind the wheel, for sure.
From a dig, that should really take the Janus all day. So yeah, if you do want, for some reason, an air-cooled 250, brand new American-built bike with a Chinese engine, you can get a Janus. That is also an air-cooled bike. That's Agent Zero for today's video.
And also, I do know that the Halcyon 250 does not cost $15,000. Maybe you could get there if you optioned it out. But I know the one Janus owner that for some reason always watches our videos and comments about Janus is going to say, it doesn't cost $15,000. I know, I was making a joke.
Yeah, but I mean, if you get the leather packages that
the leather
Jethro
daddy
Tube
package.
Bender is going to put together, you never know. So, boys, that's our ranking for new air-cooled bikes on the market today. What do you think? Do you own any of these motorcycles? Would you like to own them? Do you have an air-cooled bike in your stable? I personally think they make a great addition to a motorcycling stable. You can have a cool, fun bike that's modern. You can have a cool air-cooled bike that's more retro. It just gives you that broader palette in motorcycling. And that's what we all like. You want new experiences. Or maybe you want to be like Logan, just have one bike to rule them all that does everything.
Janus.
The Janus is imagine Janus is your one bike.
That'd be sad.
That'd be really sad. Someone out there has that setup. Out there in like West Virginia or something.
Yeah.
The Mad Max parts of the US. Anyways, that's gonna wrap up the video. Thank you so much for watching. Catch you next time.